Hello, everyone. I'm your host, Mariana, and you're listening to A Degree Farther, the official podcast of the graduate school at Hood College, where we feature current students, alumni, and faculty who are innovators on our campus and in our community. Hello, everyone. I hope you are enjoying your summer. Welcome back to A Degree Farther, the podcast where we highlight the inspiring stories of graduate students, alumni, and faculty at Hood College and beyond. Today's guest is Peter Azorsa, a soon-to-be graduate of Hood College Biomedical Science Master's Program. Raised between Maryland and Arizona, Peter earned his undergraduate degree from the University of Arizona in 2015. Since then, he's built an impressive career in both industry and government, focusing on groundbreaking work in cancer immunotherapy. Now, Peter is preparing for an exciting new chapter, beginning his Ph.D. this fall at the University of Michigan through their highly competitive program in Biomedical Science. In this episode, we'll talk about his academic path, what drives his research, and how his experiences have shaped his vision for the future of biomedical science. I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. Welcome! Hello everybody, welcome back to a new episode of A Degree Farther. Today we are with Peter Azorsa. Peter, thank you so much for being here. How are you? Thank you for taking the time to be here with us.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. And very excited. I'm in a transitory space right now, but yeah, a lot of good things coming. So I'm very excited, and of course, very excited to be here.
I am so excited to have you too. And as always, we always start, and the first question is if you can tell us a little bit about yourself, your academic and personal background, and whatever you think is useful for us to know you better.
Yeah, I think for my background, a lot of it has always been a tale of two halves. Where first part of my life, I grew up in Maryland, but then the latter half, or not the latter half, but like the latter half of my education was actually in Arizona. So my high school and I think my undergrad, or yeah, and my undergrad were done in the state of Arizona. So I actually graduated quite a while ago for my undergraduate from the University of Arizona, and I was class of 2015. And then I took a very extended break where I was in research in a couple different labs, and then ultimately I made a transition to work in the biotech industry, and that has been, excuse me, a very fulfilling and rewarding experience. And I think throughout that time, I realized I wanted to continue to improve myself. And then that's what actually ended up leading me to Hood College. And then from there, now I'm very, very thankful and excited to, move on to this next step where I'm going to be at the University of Michigan pursuing a PhD.
Yeah, and I can't wait to know more about all this. If you could tell us a little bit more of what inspired you to pursue biomedical science initially.
Yeah, well, for me, it was very much the apple not falling from the tree. My father was, or is a scientist, and growing up, I've always looked up to him. And I think from there, it was always just something that was natural for me. Especially, I think it felt for me natural to grow into being a scientist, and it was something I've always wanted to pursue. Now, I think, as everyone knows, the world of science is very, very vast, right? There are so many different types of sciences one can pursue, and I think the more time I spent working in there, the more I kind of realized what I really liked and what was most exciting to me. And I think that's where I look back on it honestly fondly now, where I can say that my diverse experience working in academia or government or now even industry has provided me so many different ways to see just how impactful science can be in all these different ways. But it also inspired me to, as I spent more time in that, I realized what I really loved, which was research, and then I wanted to continue that. And I think that's what always essentially brought me back to wanting to do a PhD. Truth be told, I've actually kind of gone back and forth with the PhD, and I think it was always whether or not I was ready for it or whether or not I could get in. And yeah, I think ultimately I was very happy that, once I started actually going to graduate courses and once I actually started interacting with the Hood College staff, I realized, okay, this is actually something I really want. And it's led me to where I am now.
In what are you gonna do the PhD?
So the PhD will be focused on immunology, but I guess it's still a bit broad in the sense that it's biomedical sciences. So it's interesting. A lot of programs nowadays, thankfully, they do put an emphasis on immunology, but then they'll allow you to do maybe other things alongside of it. So you could do bioinformatics, or you could do other, maybe like just biological chemistry, cancer biology. There are a lot of different I guess, emphasis or majors in a sense, right? That you could also work alongside of. And I think that's something that a lot of schools nowadays are becoming a lot more. They do have an emphasis, but at the same time, we don't necessarily, you're not exactly going to be only doing that. I think a lot of programs are now embracing the idea that there's so many different sciences that work hand in hand. And it'd be
Mhm.
best if we understood them, at least to a certain degree.
Yeah, like the importance of seeing things as a whole.
Definitely a much more holistic view.
Mhm. Okay. And what drew you to Hood College? Why did you choose to Hood College to pursue this degree?
Yeah, I think it was definitely a crossroads because I had actually applied in 21 cycle, and then I think trying to get into the 2022. I had applied to get into a PhD program and I was not accepted. And I think a lot of that had to do with my undergraduate performance, which was not exactly stellar. And I think it was more a crossroads where do I want to continue pursuing the idea of a PhD or not? And I think I've met some amazing people in industry, and a close friend of mine actually recommended the Hood College Biomedical Sciences master's program because he said it helped him get by, or it helped him, advance his career. It taught him a lot, and it really gave him a lot more confidence in himself academically. So, and I think that was definitely something that was appealing to me was the idea that I could advance my career. I could also get academic experience, but at the same time, it was more something that was a lot more, I guess, flexible, right? And that's been a big thing. A lot of people or a lot of the faculty at Hood College are very understanding of the fact that you are working professional. This isn't the only thing going on. And with that comes a very deep understanding, but also a lot of support in the idea that we know you're working, but we also know you want to be better. Um, and I think this is something Hood College has also been very proud of is the affordability. And that's also been very big where it just doesn't feel, it feels like this is something I can do at the same time as well as focus on my work.
Yeah, you're seeing as a human being, not just a number.
Exactly. Yeah. The small class sizes too. And then it's very, very focused, which was very different than maybe some other experiences I've had, which was, I think, very helpful for me in particular.
Yeah. There are any projects or theses that you completed while you were doing your degree at Hood College that you found like helpful, useful, or impactful for you?
I think for me, I wasn't actually able to necessarily do a thesis, but that was mostly due to a lot of my work, or just not being able to have the time to necessarily dedicate that. Currently, I'm working in the research department, biotech, and that was more something that, while it is very rewarding, right? I think it was tough to necessarily do that and a thesis. So I was very thankful that a lot of the faculty were able to provide a track that didn't do a thesis. So I did the grant proposal, and that was very, still very rewarding in the sense that it provided me an opportunity to do independent research and
Mhm.
allowed me to do something that maybe wasn't, of course, not directly relevant to what I was doing at work, but at the same time, it allowed me to kind of use those skills and then at the same time learn a lot more about something that was very close to my work, and that was more looking into transcription factors that are related to T cell exhaustion, and that's something that's very relevant to the field overall because that's a state a state that your cells reach where they're not exactly able to function like they should. And a lot of cellular therapies right now, CAR T therapy or TCR therapy, these are all cutting edge therapies that are really, really exciting and very, very, they have a lot of potential to be curative. But at the same time, every patient's T cells are different. And then there are a lot of times where they found that, these T cells are there, but they're not functional. And they have the things that we want them to have, but they're not exactly doing what we want them to do. And then that's led to such a essentially a boom in understanding of what these different states are that our T cells are in. I think that was really exciting. Was that this research project gave me an opportunity to really deeply dive into that and learn a lot of different skills, and at the same time be able to present that and interact with other faculty at the poster session. So that was probably the closest thing I got to essentially a research project, but it was still very fulfilling.
I can see the passion on you when you share all this and when you talk about this experience and you mention the learning process and all these skills. Can you share with us some of the challenges that you faced during this process and how did you face those challenges and then
Yeah, I think
share?
a lot of the challenges I think were based on time management for me at least. I think, it's a lot to balance anything along on top of work. And I think for me, for something as important as school, I think you want to clearly absorb all you can, and a lot of times it's new information, and a lot of times it's a lot more information because now it's graduate, it's not undergraduate courses anymore. And I think there was very much an adjustment period there. But I think when how did I overcome those challenges? I think a lot of it was just giving myself a lot of slack, and I think a lot of it is just finding your own rhythm to things. Um, because I mean, there'll be some days where maybe I'll just be focused on work, and some days I'll be purely dedicated to school, and it's more everyone determining what works best for them. I think for me, honestly, a lot of it will be done maybe late at night, just because that's just when I tend to focus best. Maybe it's not the most glamorous way to do it, but I think for me, it was just something that worked for me. Um, or even then, just finding out maybe you're more of a textbook reader, or maybe you're first someone who has to use alternative sources. But the point is, I think I realized for me, the biggest thing was just embracing the way you learn, and then realizing that the most important thing is that you're learning. So I think that was how I approached it.
And now, seeing the future and taking all this experience and all these things that you learn, or all these challenges that you overcome, what excites you the most about beginning your PhD at the Michigan University?
I think what most excites me about my time at or the potential, yeah, joining the University of Michigan for a PhD, I would say it's two things. One, a PhD is something I've wanted for a very long time, and I think it's to be able to reach that stage along with the help of, all the people I've worked with and especially the faculty there. I've received nothing but support there. I think being able to hit that stage, um, and be able to continue and grow from that is something I'm very excited about because I think, there's been a lot of time for reflection and looking at how much I've grown since I first started, back in 22, starting the BMS program, seeing how much I've grown since then. So I'm very excited to enter that next stage. And I think specifically University of Michigan, and when you meet all these different schools or when you go to different interviews, you'll definitely get a different vibe from different schools and from their faculty. You see what they want. And I think particularly about University of Michigan, what I liked about that meeting them and then now joining them will be the idea that they very much put an emphasis on research, really understanding why things are happening. And even then, I was encouraged to really diversify and explore and sit down and really explore different, maybe, different types of sciences. Before, it's always been very focused. And I think that's something maybe I picked up from industry time where they're very much focused on projects and focused on a lot of different things. But I think just from conversations at the University of Michigan, there was a lot more emphasis of exploring and learning who I am as a researcher, and also at the same time trying new things and maybe exploring a question for the sake of just knowing more as opposed to maybe having a specific project in mind. And I think that was something that I really came to appreciate.
Mhm. So you're excited about research, and as you mentioned, these PhDs in immunology,
Mhm.
but there's a bunch of options that you're gonna be able to explore. Is there any focus or any particular interest, or you're more like open to explore?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it will depend on the first year. So in the first year of the PhD, you're going to be rotating through different labs. And I think that's where Michigan very much tries to emphasize you should keep an open mind because I'm sure a lot of people come into a PhD program saying, oh, I'm going to work on this, or I'm going to work on this cell type, I'm going to work on that. And maybe by the time you come out, you've worked on something completely different. That's actually incredibly normal from what I've heard. And so I think coming from all my experience in the biotech industry, specifically working in, cancer immunotherapy, that's it, very exciting, very translational, has so much impact or potential to have impact. And it, works with immunology, which we're learning so much about now as a community. So that would definitely inspire me to pursue immunology, right? And then hopefully I would be able to learn something related to T cells or maybe APCs. But I think that's the current plan, but we'll see. I think that's going to be the biggest opportunity for attending a place like University of Michigan is they'll give me the opportunity to try out different labs, and then maybe I'll fall in love with something new, and then I'll find myself in a different space, but still very excited and focused on research nonetheless. And I think a lot of that has to do with the idea that, trying to get to that point where you do have a therapy in hand requires you to study so many different things. And I've been exposed to that in a lot of different courses, even during my time at BMS. I still vividly remember when even in or one of the core classes in protein biochemistry, learning about those protein interactions, and then you see that applied in different spaces, especially at work, and later on, and a lot more papers coming out now where protein structure is becoming very, very important, especially within TCR therapy. So it's already, I don't know the exact space I'm going to work in, but I wouldn't be surprised that no matter what, it's going to have an impact, and it's going to be related to what I want to work on, hopefully, um, later in the line, which is cancer immunotherapy.
Okay. And talking about that future in which you want to work with cancer immunotherapy, how do you see your work contributing to the future medicine and public health?
So I think definitely immunotherapy has so much potential. It can definitely lead to a curative effect. It can cure cancer as opposed to before where we're controlling it and or maybe trying to stop, yeah, we're trying to control it or maybe reduce it, which in itself is, I'm not going to try to minimize that. That's already very impressive and it's worthwhile. But excuse me. But I think immunotherapy has such potential, but that also requires a lot more understanding. So I think that's ultimately why I want to study it, is that I want to contribute to the scientific community's overall knowledge of our immune system. And then with that knowledge, even if it's basic research or translational research, that will bring, the scientific community closer to being able to create something that could lead to an actual cure to a type of cancer. So I think I've always come at this with the idea, like no matter what your research is, as long as it probably does contribute to something, maybe it's not as flashy or as close to the patient as some work is, but in the end of the day, in the grand scheme of things, it all helps because it's all built on the community's knowledge. It's all built on growth, and I think that's something you see in research is everyone is sharing what they've discovered, and then everyone's citing each other, everyone's referencing each other because we're all trusting each other that we all shared good data or that we shared the right research, and then we can all start building off of each other and doing great things. Yeah, based off each other's findings. So I
Yeah.
think it will definitely have an effect on medicine and public health, which I think is especially important.
I really like what you say about the importance of building community and working in community.
Yeah, I think that's something the scientific community very much emphasizes, or at least University of Michigan and Hood both emphasize, was just talking to your classmates, working together. The point thing is that at the end of the day, you come to understand it. It doesn't matter if you talk to your classmates or maybe you had to talk to the teacher or something. And to that end, the important thing was just you all got to where you needed to be.
Yeah. And now I would like to go back to the
Mhm.
past before you start this amazing journey that you're doing. And if you could share with us, what do you think that were some key decisions or habits that help you to get where you are today?
Yeah. Um, I think a key decision for me was just not worrying as much about the speed, or I guess the time at which this happens, especially speaking as someone, who's about to turn 32 and is about to start their PhD program. I'm sure I feel like there's a constant comparison of yourself that, oh, if you didn't get into a PhD program right outside of undergrad or maybe early on, you kind of missed your chance. Um, I would say that was the biggest thing. Even back when I was starting in 22, I kind of had to sit there and tell myself, okay, am I ready to start a master's program and then do a PhD? Also, ultimately, to kind of follow the path I want. Am I ready to do that? And I think initially, or I think maybe in my early 20s, I did kind of think like that. I kind of thought, oh, well, most people do it at that time. So I guess I missed my chance. But looking back, I think that once sat down and made the decisions thinking, no, I want this. I want this PhD. I'm going to do the master's program to help me out, to improve myself. And then I'm going to also, still apply for the PhD because that's what I want. And I think that once I removed that whole expectation of when to do it, at what point do I need to get this done by, or, there's no way, it was kind of like removing a limiter. And then I think what I found was that I actually got more support from that when I talked to my, manager, or when I talked to my peers. A lot of them were very supportive, and I think that's been the biggest one. It's very corny, but staying true to yourself and realizing, pursuing what you want, it definitely removes any sort of limitation or doubts. And then at the same time, kind of removing any sort of shame to ask for help. I think that was another big one too. Reaching out to a lot of these professors and saying, can you help me out, or can you maybe help explain this, or even that, just kind of admitting, just, hey, it's been a very long time since I've been at school. help me out here, help me catch up, or help me get into a flow. What would you recommend? And a lot of them have been nothing but supportive. So I think that would be the two biggest things: is don't put any expectation on yourself on how long or how old you are when you want to do something, and at the same time, um, yeah, just embrace that part, embrace the part of you that wants to do that one thing.
I'm taking all those words. Like, um, I always like to do some questions related like with advice or any things you have to say for the people that is right now starting this journey or thinking about starting the journey of doing a master or a PhD. So if you have any quote, book, mentor, phrase, I mean, you already share some advices, but anything else that you think that could be helpful for people who are thinking about it or starting the journey right now?
I think for anyone starting the journey, it would be probably find a good role model and stick with that, or find a good mentor does a lot, I think. And I've been very lucky that I've had multiple good mentors, at least in work. And a lot of that has been that actually inspired me to pursue my PhD further. So I think once you find a good mentor, don't be afraid to reach out to them. There have been managers that I've had years ago that I still talk to and reach out thinking, hey, can you help me out with this decision? Or can you help me out with the way I'm thinking? Am I approaching this right? Um, and then they'll be if they're good, they'll be reaching out to you, right? They'll give you a lot of feedback. And I think for me, that was more, you know, looking at what they've done and why, I think really understanding why you look up to them. And then also for me, at least, it helped me with the PhD because then when I'm working with a lot of these mentors, they all had PhDs and I could see the difference at that point. The proof was kind of in the pudding that they were very, very well studied. The way they thought, I kind of thought, oh, holy cow, what's the difference between me and them when I want to be them in, 10 or 15 years? And then I realized a lot of it, at least in my case, of course, just this is very personalized, but in my case, it was more of the time and training that they did during their doctoral program. Um, so I think a lot of that has been just, very much trust your mentors once you find a good one, of course, and then trust your gut. And then um, yeah, I think that's been a big part of it. And then also realizing giving yourself grace, because I know while I am saying, there's a lot of time, you can definitely look up to these people, right? And you're almost putting them on a pedestal, but then also recognize that it takes a lot of time to get there. When we see all these seminars with all these PIs or with these established professors who are incredible, right? Some of them will even say, I've been through a lot of rejection, and you wouldn't even believe that because all you're seeing right now is them at the very top. You haven't seen the decades of work that they've put in. And so once you take the time to zoom out and realize that, it takes a lot of good time and work to get to that point, and they're getting all their flowers, which is awesome. But not to put that expectation on yourself or that comparison on yourself. Like if you're just starting out, give yourself the grace that you have a lot of time and you're going to make mistakes, but also there's so many good things you're going to learn and do along the way.
Yeah. Well, to finish this great conversation, I would like to take it from the professional perspective to the personal perspective and ask you what keeps you grounded or inspired outside the lab, the classroom, and the academic field.
Yeah, outside the academic field, a lot of what keeps me grounded would be spending time with my family and or spending time with my loved ones, my girlfriend or my friends, just spending time with them, maybe outside of science. Granted, it's always good to have someone within the scientific community, right? Because it's very much a sense of community. But a lot of inspiration comes from, of course, my family, my father, I think, especially, but just all the people in your support group. I would say that would be the biggest thing. It's just the people who inspire you to keep going. And then, of course, yeah, that includes your mentors and like hearing their stories. I think that's where you can find inspiration from a lot of different people. Um, and then the keeping grounded is just being able to savor the little things, right? Like even be able to just have dinner with your partner, with your family, and then just be able to laugh about something. Just a
Mm.
lot of that, because especially because yeah, to be honest, like working and then also doing a master's program, it is a lot of hard work and it takes up a lot of time. So being able to savor, you know, time outside of that, really savor and be present in there, I think that's very important.
Thank you, Peter. It was great talking with you. I really enjoyed this conversation. I learned a lot. I really enjoy to see how passionate you are about all this and your experience and the hope you have of the future. I wish you best and people like you give me hope in humanity. So I'm very grateful for what you're doing and for the passion that you're putting on all your work and all your experience. I don't know if there's anything else you would like to add before before wrapping up?
No, I would just say, I guess if for anyone who's listening who is starting out early in their career and is interested in maybe talking about biotech or the PhD process or any of that, feel free to reach out to me. I think you should be able to find me on LinkedIn, but if not, I'll definitely make myself public. But I do believe a lot of it is just removing the sort of mysticism behind a lot of this, right? I think a lot of it can be helped by us just sharing and kind of, clearing things up, and then it becomes a lot less daunting. So if anyone ever wants any advice, especially in the hood college community, please don't be afraid to reach out to me.
Thank you. I will make sure to add your information to the description of the episode.
Thank you so much. And thank you again so much for having me. This has been an absolute pleasure.
Thank you for the time and the words. Thank you so much for listening to A Degree Further, the official podcast of the graduate school at Hood College, where we help you go farther in your life, in your career, and in your community. Be sure to tune in next time and to catch up on all the latest episodes. Visit hood.edu/a degree further. I'm your host, Mariana, and thank you so much for listening.